Look closely at these 19th century pioneers posing in front of these massive stone palaces. I mean, does it really look like they built them with hand tools? Or did they just find them? I want you to imagine the scene for a moment, right? It's the mid-1800s. The world is still navigating by candlelight, and most cities, well, they're little more than dirt tracks and wooden shacks. Intense building suspense. But then, you look at the photographs. You see men with ragged beards and mud-caked boots standing next to horses and buggies. But behind them, rising out of the muck like a fever dream, is a colossal structure of granite and marble. Grand, awestruck. We're talking massive domes, intricate Corinthian columns, and Greco-Roman architecture that looks like it belongs in the heart of ancient Rome, not the untamed wilderness of the American West or the frozen plains of Russia. Does that make sense to you, honestly? Because the more I look at these images, the less the official story holds up. Sarcastic. We are told these settlers arrived in a wasteland, and yet, within just a few short years, they supposedly erected architectural masterpieces that would take us decades to replicate today, even with our modern cranes and power tools. Investigative, skeptical. They tell us these grand buildings were constructed during gold rushes or booms by people who were, supposedly struggling just to find clean water and a warm meal. Fascinated. Just look at the scale of what I'm showing you. These are buildings that require deep foundations, massive logistics, and thousands of highly skilled stonemasons. Yet, in the background of these photos, the streets are nothing but mud. There are no paved roads, no heavy machinery, and absolutely no infrastructure to support such a monumental undertaking. It's a mismatch. It's a glitch in the story of our civilization. Epic cinematic. The tension here is unavoidable. Either our ancestors were gods among men who could conjure stone cathedrals out of the dirt with sheer willpower, or we are being lied to about where these cities actually came from. I am going to open the door to a world that shouldn't even exist, according to your history books. Whispering, intense. I want you to prepare yourself, because once you see the impossible horizon of the 19th century, you will never look at a historic downtown the same way again. Deep with finality. We aren't just looking at buildings, you see. We're looking at the fingerprints of a lost reality. I want you to take a long look at the official history of the 1800s. Really look at it. Skeptical. We are told that men in top hats and waistcoats, traveling by horse and carriage no less, managed to conquer a wild, rugged frontier. Amazed, while simultaneously erecting some of the most complex, massive, and ornate architecture the world has ever seen. Measured. The history books call it manifest destiny and industrial grit. Intense. But I call it a logistical impossibility. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of these buildings for a second. Astounded. We see massive stone structures, some spanning entire city blocks, built in just 2 or 3 years. In cities like Chicago, San Francisco, and even Salt Lake City, these structures just appeared, right when the surrounding landscape was still nothing but mud and wooden boardwalks. I've looked at the records, and frankly, the architectural math simply doesn't add up.
Consider the logistics for a moment, right? We are talking about millions of tons of stone. Where were the specialized cranes? Where were the power tools? I mean, if you've ever tried to move a single slab of granite, you know it's a nightmare, even with modern equipment. Yet we're told that these massive blocks were quarried, transported over miles of unpaved trails, and hoisted hundreds of feet into the air using nothing more than ropes, pulleys, and the sweat of laborers who were often, get this, living in tents. And here is the part that truly bothers me. Why would a struggling pioneer town, a place that hasn't even figured out how to pave its own main street,
Prioritize a 100-foot marble dome. Sarcastic. Why build a courthouse that looks like the Parthenon when your people are still dying of cholera because there's no proper drainage? It's like finding a Ferrari parked in front of a cave. You see? It suggests a level of wealth, technology, and stability that the people of that era simply did not possess. The official narrative tells us they were building for the future. But the more I look at the photos from that era, the more it feels like we are looking at an inheritance, not a construction project. It feels less like these buildings were built for these people and more like they were discovered by them. But if these pioneers didn't build them, then who did? The answers are hidden in the one place no one thinks to look, the very basements of the buildings themselves. Because when you dig a little deeper, you realize these structures don't just go up, they go down. And what lies beneath the surface? Well, that is where the story gets truly dark. I want you to really look at the official timeline of the 1800s. It's a century marked by an almost impossible paradox. On one hand, I'm told this was a time of horse-drawn carriages, mud-caked streets, and primitive hand tools. Primitive, right? But on the other, I see photographs of cities sprouting massive neoclassical stone wonders that look like they belong in the heart of the Roman Empire at its absolute peak. But there's a pattern that emerges in the mid to late 1800s. A pattern of fire and progress that looks less like urban development and more like a systematic erasure. Think about the Great Fires. Chicago in 1871, Boston in 1872, Seattle in 1889, San Francisco.
I want you to really think about the logistics here. We're told these buildings were made of staff, a mixture of plaster and hemp fiber meant to be temporary. Yet these temporary structures were outfitted with hundreds of thousands of electric lights at a time when most of the world was still using kerosene lamps. They featured advanced sewage systems, massive machinery halls, and architectural details that would take us decades to replicate, even with modern cranes and CAD software. If you had the technology to build a utopia like that, why would you ever tear it down? Because that's exactly what happened. As soon as the gates closed and the crowds went home, these temporary marvels were just dismantled. They were dynamited. They were burned to the ground. They were wiped off the face of the map until nothing but a few stone columns remained. Why go through the monumental effort of building a high-tech, electrified paradise just to destroy it months later? The official story says it was all a show of ingenuity and temporary exhibitions. Sure. But I believe the truth is much more clinical. These world fairs weren't celebrations of what we were building. They were the final viewing of what was already there. A way to let the public see these grand structures one last time before they were scrubbed from existence to hide the truth of who really built them. I'm starting to realize that we weren't building for the future. We were cleaning up the remnants of a past that no longer fit the story the new world wanted to tell. But if this previous civilization was so advanced, and if their cities were being systematically erased, it leads me to one haunting question. If the buildings were still standing, what happened to the people who were supposed to be living in them? Because when I looked closer at the photographs from this era, I noticed a detail that chilled me to the bone. And it's something almost no one talks about. I've spent months, actually closer to a year now, mapping the anomalies that your history textbooks, well, they simply refuse to acknowledge. And you see, the further I dig, the more the official narrative begins to crumble. I want you to look at the photographs from the 1850s, the very first records of our supposedly growing modern cities. What do you see? You see massive ornate boulevards, towering stone structures, and sprawling plazas that look like they belong in a Roman dream. But I want you to look closer. There was no one there. These images show cities like Paris, New York, and San Francisco completely abandoned. Now, the
official story tells us that early cameras required long exposure times, and that the people moving around simply vanished into a ghost-like blur. But I'm not buying it. Where were the horses? Where was the street clutter? Growing intensity, where were the thousands of people who supposedly built these giants? It looks as if the photographers arrived just after a mass disappearance, capturing a silent world that was already built, just waiting for us to move in and claim it.
And then there's the dirt. If you walk through the older districts of Moscow, London, or even Omaha, Nebraska, I want you to look at the ground level. You'll see grand windows and main entrances half buried, sitting 6 to 10 feet below the modern sidewalk. I've looked at the excavation records, and this isn't just settling, right? It certainly isn't an architectural choice to put your most expensive masonry and light-giving windows directly into the soil. It's a global layer of earth, a mud flood, that seems to have swept across the planet, burying the first floors of a previous civilization. I'm convinced we didn't build these foundations. We simply dug them out and called them our own. I've also crunched the numbers on the construction timelines provided by our historians, and, well, they simply do not add up. Take the U.S. Capitol or the great cathedrals of Europe. We're told these were completed in just a few years by people using horse-drawn carts, handsaws, and simple pulleys. Yet the precision of the stone, the massive weight of the domes, and the intricate acoustics suggest a level of engineering that would challenge our best architects even today. How did pioneer societies, supposedly struggling with basic survival and limited tools, find the resources to build masterpieces that have stood for centuries, while our modern glass towers start to fail after 50 years? If you need more proof of a unified global past that has been scrubbed from your memory, I'll show you the star forts. They are scattered across every single continent, from the coast of Florida to the heart of Japan. From high above, they look like complex geometric patterns, almost like giant circuit boards or frequency resonators. History dismisses them as fortifications for gunpowder warfare, but many of them sit in valleys or have no logical defensive purpose for 19th century settlers. They are a signature. They are the remnants of a lost global technology that was here long before the reset of the 1800s. Everything I'm finding points to a single uncomfortable truth. We are living in the ruins of a giant civilization, playing house in buildings we couldn't dream of replicating. But that's not even the craziest part of this investigation. Because while the buildings tell us how they lived, there is one specific set of documents I found that reveals exactly how they were erased. However, there was one detail everyone missed, hidden in the blueprints of the World's Fairs, and it changes everything I thought I knew about the year 1893. I've spent years, I mean years, looking at these blueprints, and the math, well, it just doesn't add up. But you see, the evidence isn't just hidden in some dusty, forgotten archive. It's right there, literally under your feet. Next time you walk through the downtown of an old city, I want you to look at the ground level. I mean, really look at it. Notice those windows half sunken into the pavement? They tell a story the history books have tried so hard to bury. I'm slightly cynical. We're told these were intentional light wells or some architectural quirk, right? But your eyes, they tell you something else entirely. They look like the remnants of a world that was submerged, not designed. I've realized something uncomfortable during this investigation. We aren't the master builders of this world. No. We are the scavengers, living in the ruins of a golden age that was stolen, erased from our collective memory. We didn't create this grandeur. We just moved in, slapped on some plaster, and painted right over the cracks. This leads to the final, chilling payoff of everything I've uncovered. Our history. It isn't a straight line of progress heading toward a brighter future. It's a cycle.
A cycle of resets. Every few centuries, it seems the board is wiped clean, and a new civilization wakes up in the shells of the old one, never once questioning where the gargantuan walls and impossible domes actually came from. We are told we are the pinnacle of human achievement, but we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Giants we were taught to forget. I'm challenging you to look beyond the plaques and the bronze statues next time you're out. Direct and serious. Don't just accept the narrative they've handed you. Stay curious. Because the truth is hidden in plain sight, carved into the very stone you walk past every single day. If they could hide an entire civilization, what else are they hiding? Subscribe, and I'll show you.